Hey, good morning, Astros fans. It is Monday. It is April 15th. And at one level, if you look at the week, they won both series 2-3. On the other hand, wouldn't we feel better if they won the last game instead of instead of losing the last game in both of these series? It feels like, aren't they supposed to sweep? And you know what? Couple playoff contenders, and they won both of them. They continue to win lots of games. Are we happy enough, James?
Yes, I am happy. Look, I think the reason why I get why people are frustrated about losing the getaway game, because it seems like we're in this area of Astros baseball, we're always losing the getaway game, or we're always not sweeping. But you brought it up last time we had the show. If you continue to win two out of every 3 games, you're going to be, it's what, 100-game pace to win. And I think we're starting to see, for the most part, the offense really hitting its stride. And it seems like the pitching is starting to rebound and match what the offense is doing. Yesterday, notwithstanding, because it wasn't a starting Astros offense in there, like there were days off. So yeah, I'm happy. I know that it's frustrating because the Rangers also keep winning, but that's life sometimes.
And they didn't yesterday, so cheers to Patrick Bailey.
And cheers to Evan. We have to talk about Evan Grant at some point on this, but we'll get to the end on that, because
this is in my notes here.
What a putz. Okay.
Tease for later. Andy.
Sunday was, it reminded me of childhood. So I was having a very nostalgic moment, because you never really wanted tickets for a Sunday game because you knew they were going to throw out the crap lineup, because that's when old school managers used to rest their starters. So if you wanted to see a healthy dose of a young Denny Walling, that's the game you went to.
Mark Bailey every time I went on a Sunday.
Yeah, but that's and you knew they were going to score one run because it was the Astros in the Astrodome, and that's what it was going to be. And you just hope you were there for that one run with your $4 tickets in the outfield, while your dad is complaining that he had to pay $2 to park in the Astros parking lot. These are all real complaints, folks. It was this 4-2 week out of 6 games. It's hard to complain about that. Nobody thought we were going into Baltimore taking 2 of 3. We did. We probably realistically could have taken all 3, although there was a whole lot of happenstance and luck that happened to take the first game, so can't argue with it. Yeah. And then you dominated with what I assume is going to be very close to a playoff lineup against a not horrible Angels. I mean, the Angels aren't a good franchise, but this is a competitive team they at least have on the field. They're a 500 team. That's what their record shows them to be. So they're going to win as many as they lose. We took 2 of 3 from them. We need to continue, though. If you're going to play 2 of 3 baseball, you're going to have to beat the Marlins 2 of 3 on the road. And you're going to have to deal with Twitter getting all freaked out that Yuli's going to get a base hit and Jose Abreu's on the IL.
Yeah, I think, well, we can segue then into our discussion of first base, since neither of those players that Andy mentioned is the current starting first baseman for the Astros. It is living out the dream we all had in 2013. It's John Singleton hitting multiple home runs in a game. Astros Twitter has gone really nuts for John Singleton, and I enjoyed the heck out of the 2 home runs. He's been sort of contributing here, right? Is it okay to tell people to temper their expectations? Andy, I'll start with you.
I think you could have stopped your sentence with Astros Twitter has gone really nuts, and that would have been still as accurate.
That's true. That was an active tense, and it really could have been in, both past, active, and future tense.
Yeah, it's Singleton's a great story, and I will fully admit I am one of the people who's very dubious about his success at the major league level based on the first 400 at-bats he had at the major league level. Having said that, Friday night was a fantastic story, and if you couldn't get swept up in that, I don't know what to tell you. What I am disappointed in, well, before I start that, Singleton showed you a lot of what he is. If he makes contact with the ball, it's going to go way far away, and he did that twice Friday night. And those were legitimate home runs. Those weren't just got over the wall out of the reach of the outfielder. Those were bombs. Having said that, after that, what did he go? something like 2 for 14, 1 for 14. It wasn't a good amount of numbers. I'm sorry, 2 for 12. So it's a very feast or famine type of player, I think, that is what you're gonna see. I think the things that impressed me about him this week that I wasn't expecting is he showed very good plate discipline. He didn't
Five
look
walks.
Yeah, he didn't look overmatched, which he has in the past, and he has at times in AAA. And he kept his strikeout numbers down, and to Brian's point, drew a lot of base on balls. And if you're getting that out of your 6-hole hitter or 7-hole hitter, depending on where they put him on a given night, until we get some definitive news on Jose Abreu and what's going to happen there, that's not the worst case scenario, because we've seen this franchise bring up JJ Matijevic, and we've seen them bring up the tall, lanky guy who I'm still mad at about that San Diego series in 21.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Tyler something. I don't know. Anyway, we've seen a lot of fits and starts at first base for the Astros. They seem to have a problem developing those guys, which is part of the reason Yuli hung around for as long as he did in a prominent role. But hey, good for Singleton. What I don't like is the fact that we have now taken to hating Jose Abreu and pretending that somehow he's faking this injury, or that the Astros are faking it for him to save him the embarrassment. And now you can go anywhere on Astros Twitter and see, calls for him to retire, calls for him to give his money back to the team, just all kinds of weird, bizarre stuff, when everybody to a man was happy about signing him, even with that 3rd-year penalty that we took on. So it's not a great look for our fan base.
James.
Yeah. Andy broke down all the numbers. I too was really happy with the base on balls, and like from a narrative, from a storytelling perspective, I absolutely love the story. The part of the story that I don't love is that he's the best of what's left, and it really doesn't speak as much to John Singleton as it does, like to Andy's point earlier, the fact that we don't have an option at first base that we can look at and say, here's our first baseman of the future. And it's one of the few positions in the Astro system where we can't do that. So I love the story. I expect him to have the exact kind of rest of the season like he had this series, where he's not going to hit for high average. He's going to hit a ball a few times and it's going to go really, really far. Whenever I say I don't love that option at first base, it's not because I have an issue with John Singleton at all. He doesn't feel like a World Series champion first baseman. And I do not believe that Abreu is faking the back injury, nor do I think the Astros are trying to hide it. The back injury actually makes some degree of sense as to why he would get hot for stretches and then cold for stretches and then hot for stretches again. And I guess he took cortisone shots. Those are not things you mess around with if you're trying to play an elite or an elaborate game to hide an injury. So the Astros, I think, are better with a healthy Jose Abreu than they are with a healthy John Singleton.
Taylor Jones, by the way, Taylor Jones.
Oh, yeah. And then Presley
is
gave up the cookie right after that.
Yeah, my memory is horrible.
There are too many Taylors and Tylers in the major leagues right now, and basically none of them are distinct. So
agreed.
Unless it's Tyler White.
Apologies.
He's only distinct because he was at the donut shop all the time.
Well, that makes him not distinct. That makes him not distinct in my world, but then again, that's a different issue here. Second here, Abreu had the god-awful April and May. He had turned things around in June and July, maybe not to the level we had sort of, ideally hoped for when they signed him last in the offseason. But certainly, too, he was an above-average player. He had like a WRC plus around 120 over 115, 120 over those 2 months. You could leave him 6, 7 hole in the lineup. And if you look at his rest of the season projections, they're in line with that. And so if we want to judge first base, the sort of barrier is not, good Lord, Jose Abreu has been among the sort of worst regulars in baseball, but Jose Abreu had a god-awful 2 months and then got better. And we should judge him on sort of the better part, because that's sort of what we expect. Will we get that out of John Singleton while Abreu's out? I don't think we have a good idea how long Abreu is going to be out.
Back injuries are always tricky.
Yeah, like it's not something where even if they said we just think it's 2 weeks and he'll definitely be back, had they said that this weekend, I'd be skeptical, and not just because the Astros talking about an injury. um, their back injury, it's tricky. He's had a terrible August, which hasn't been a long time, but maybe it's because the back was flaring up and, maybe should have gone out a week ago. But, one thing about Jose Abreu, and this goes to I don't think he's faking this, is he's been a remarkably durable player throughout his career. And major league players, particularly major league veterans, put a lot of value on the term they borrow from horse racing, on posting.
Right.
Showing up every day. And, again, so I don't think that for Jose Abreu. I expect Jose Abreu to be the everyday first baseman in the playoffs.
If he's healthy, right.
I'm assuming that he'll be done by then, fingers crossed. And if so, maybe taking a month off will be helpful to get him back in there. And again, if Singleton gets what we've gotten from him so far, that'd be great. And again, the most encouraging thing is the plate discipline. 5 walks and 2 strikeouts so far. Exceedingly small sample, right?
Right. But I do at least feel better about Singleton as a backup than I do the other options. And I think that's like, because to Andy's point, he might at least run into 1 or 2 and it's going to go over the fence.
Well, and we saw that on Tuesday night in Baltimore, where I believe he led off the 9th inning with a walk and a really tough at bat, where my analysis of Tuesday night, Felix Bautista wasn't at his best because he couldn't control his split finger, but Felix Bautista, not at his best, is a really darn good reliever.
Yeah.
And he just got by the Astros.
And he almost got again. So,
yeah.
Yeah,
he only got saved by, the ball hitting the glove rather than going into the outfield and not blowing the save on Wednesday, which, again, we face the Orioles in the playoffs. That can't hurt from the mental standpoint. But again, it was a really high quality at bat. It was a major league at bat against the one pitcher you want out there for 1 inning, the best pitcher for 1 inning in baseball right now, who again, I think wasn't at his peak, but his not peak is really good. And again, lots of high quality at bats by the Astros in that inning, including by John Singleton. So hopefully we see more of that. We're going to need to, because he's the first baseman, or it's Gray Kessinger. So let's go with John Singleton, at least for right now. How good is JP France? I know how good he's been, but as I look at his baseball savant page, it's a lot of blue and not a lot of red. And then I go down below that and I look at his stats, and well, it's a lot of really good stuff here. Should I stop worrying about the future with JP France and just appreciate the present? Or, should I just spend time on Baseball Reference and not on Baseball Savant? So I look at the numbers and not the, so I look at the results and not the process.
I think France is a results guy. I don't know that he's ever going to have things that wow you other than maybe spin rate, which I think the Astros are very good at capitalizing on with guys. They have made all-stars out of people like Ryan Presley by capitalizing on the use of spin rate. And I think that's what JP France brings. I think there's also a certain amount of not quantifiable, so I don't want to get you out of your comfort zone, but a little bit of, what does it matter at this point? I made the major leagues. I'm going to throw everything out there and hope that it works. And I think you have to have some of that. I'm going to make it work however it needs to work from guys at the major league level. And I think France is one of those guys. Do I expect him to put this kind of performance up year over year for the next 5 years? Probably not.
Yeah.
Are you riding this hand like you would with a Vern Rule back from 1980, where it comes out of nowhere and goes 10-1, 10-2? Yeah, and playoff teams have to have those guys that come out of nowhere. I think the things that are maintainable about JP France is he doesn't seem like he gets shook very often. It doesn't feel like moments get too big for him. Outside of the first home start, where I think we could all see the emotions got a bit the better of him, but he's very even keeled. He has good stuff. He seems to know how to pitch. And I think that's just part of not having baseball's a 99 fastball to rely on to get you out of things. You've had to learn to pitch. He's had to learn to pitch to rebuild his career that he almost walked away from a couple of times, if you've listened to his story. So he's a great story, and he's going to make things very interesting the rest of this year. But, if you're putting a playoff roster together, he's got to be your number 3 starter with what's going on at the Astros right now. I can't see giving Urquidy at his health a start over him, and I really can't see giving Hunter Brown a start right now. Hunter Brown feels like more of a bullpen weapon in a 7-game series anyway. So I think it's going to be a great story. I wish, let's put it this way. If the Astros were the New York Yankees, JP France would be leading for Rookie of the Year right now. He plays in Houston, so maybe not, but I'm pretty sure they've given that award to somebody in Baltimore by now.
Yeah, I think, I think JP France should be the Rookie of the Year. I think that it's very much I think at this point in August, you are what your record says you are. You are what your numbers say you are. But I also recognize what Brian's saying and can see why we've seen the Cinderella story a lot. And we've seen that it doesn't necessarily, the sequel's never as good as the first one. So yeah, maybe he's not going to be somebody we're going to like hang his number up at Minute Maid Park or rely on the way we've relied on Fromber or Javier or Verlander or whoever. But I do think this year he's the hot hand, and you got to ride the hot hand. And just as my, like, from an emotional perspective, I'm a lot more relaxed when JP France is starting than I am with Hunter Brown, even though I know Hunter Brown is a better pitcher. Like, he just is, and he will have a better career. I think he's dealing with some fatigue. I think he's dealing with lots of things. And I don't know. I think that we have to just take this for what it is. Every time that you think he's going to face an opponent that's going to finally blow him up, it doesn't happen. And, he's probably got 6 more starts left this year. Does that feel about right to y'all? And then I think he definitely, what's that?
Yeah. I mean, there's 6 or 7 weeks left in the season, depending on how you want to look at the calendar. So yes.
Yeah. So I think we just need to enjoy it. And I do think that he will be a factor in the playoffs.
So they're going to get out of the 6-man rotation briefly. Hunter Brown's going to go to the bullpen in Miami for the next 3 games. And then when he starts next will be dictated by how he gets used out of the bullpen. But they're in basically they've got 1 off day over the next 23 days, something like that. So they're in a how they use the pitching staff, both in terms of, hey, they've really got to win these games, right? But also secondarily, right, they need to keep things in balance and not overuse guys. And as much as the AL West is a prize, they're still going to be in October no matter what. So it'll be a very interesting balancing act. And I suspect they will not be on the accelerator fully, certainly not as much as, Astros Twitter, or frankly, I get plenty of texts from friends that look like Astros Twitter. They're just not on social media, that are like, why are we not throwing our best relievers every single game, which you can't do, but hey, that's, it's part of it here. So the rotation will be, or that we will see, the other interesting thing I'm going to track in Miami is that the pitchers in Miami are Fromber, Javier, and then Verlander. Are we going to get Maldi all 3 games at catcher? Those are the 3 guys who demand Maldi.
Well,
maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. And I'm also starting to wonder how much I'm starting to wonder how much Dusty just leans on the whole, this is the guy Maldi wants, because it's the only thing we can look to in the middle of the catcher debate. I just can't imagine because when Verlander was here before, there was a whole season where Maldi wasn't his guy. So I don't.
Yeah.
It also feels like it feels like you're setting yourself up for failure if Maldi gets injured. Well, now these guys have never thrown to, I don't know.
Cesar Selling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's something to watch. I never want to get too much into that debate, in large part because my opinion is I don't think we're persuading anybody at this point on the catcher debate. And so,
yeah, I think the variability there might be with Javier, just because Fromber's going to get Maldonado
Yeah.
And that's tonight. So there's not probably a lot of movement there. And
Yeah.
it was a day game followed by a semi-night game. It is an East Coast 5:40 start tonight. But Diaz catching probably is against Javier, at which, and I think most fans, well, most reasonable fans would be okay if it was a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
And that, kind of works out if you're doing a 6-man rotation. You got 3 guys Diaz can catch, 3 guys Maldonado can catch. But it's not a 50-50 split. It's a 70-30 or an 80-20 split. And unfortunately, a lot of those DH at bats are not going to Diaz also. I think
it's a big outfield in Miami.
Yeah.
So particularly with Javier, you've got and
Verlander.
This is the other reason he may start for Javier is Javier gives up a lot of fly balls, and that's when having a McCormick, Jake, Tucker outfield would be to your most advantageous.
So that puts Jordan at DH, and then
yeah, but if Jordan's at DH, there are no other DH at bats. I mean, it's not like you can put Diaz. And I am loath to do this, but Chandler Rome had a very good article over the weekend, or maybe it was late Friday, in The Athletic about why the Astros have been hesitant to use Diaz at first. And reading between the lines on that a little bit, yes, Yainer Diaz played 48 games in the minor leagues last year at first base. There was a point where Yordan Alvarez played a few games at first base, and the Astros did not like what they saw, and evidently they still don't like what they see at first base. It was couched a little bit nicer than that, that there's a lot to learn from Maldonado catching even on days you're not catching.
Yeah.
But it makes sense in that context. Now, Astros fans aren't going to like that because it still, at the end of the day, means Yainer's not playing as much as we would like him to. But it makes sense in the context of developing Yainer for the future, as well as a lot of organizational alignment. It's not just Dusty picking his favorite guy.
Yeah.
So
it's not just the Astros. Lots of teams put lots of value on catchers and how they handle pitchers and how they call games. That's not exclusively to the Astros. It's just particularly notable this year because you have.
But I do think too, though,
offensive quality and experience, James.
But I also think that part of the reason Astros Twitter has an issue with it is that Maldi's taken multiple steps back defensively, and there's been examples where some of these pitchers have had Maldi call his games and get blown up, and then Diaz has called their games and not. And so to me, I just wonder how much of it is Dusty likes Maldi and he's comfortable, and so maybe he projects it on the pitchers, but maybe he's the one who feels more comfortable.
100%. Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certain there's some of that because managers have to be comfortable with their catchers. That's a thing that actually happens. But I also think there is something that Yainer is not doing yet, catching the ball that the Astros organization want him to see. And it's surely not playing out in the numbers, to Jim's point, and every Twitter post that I read these days. There's all kinds of fun things like catcher ERA that don't favor Maldonado. Having said that, there's some level of prep or some level of understanding of how to manipulate the game from the catcher position that he's not quite there yet on. And whether we agree with it or not, the Astros organization feels that that's a thing. So it's kind of at this point tilting at windmills. Everybody here would love to see Yainer playing more. And I think we all agree that we'd like to see Yainer catching more. And we may find out next year what the actual issue is with Yainer catching every day. But this last 7 weeks and then the playoffs, this is the team that we have. And it's kind of, you can get frustrated by it, or you can just kind of accept it and move forward, because I don't see it changing for the rest of this year. I don't think they've been resting up Yainer to catch up the playoffs.
No, I don't either. But I do think that the complaint of not seeing him at DH then is valid, because if it's going to be a Kessinger at DH or somebody that the Hensley we've seen at DH,
can we just put him at first base? It's a very easy position to play.
It's very hard.
So Andy referenced the 7 weeks left. The Astros are in pretty good shape in the wild card, and they're playing really well right now. So they've been, adding more security to that over the last couple of weeks. Of course, the big issue is winning the AL West. Now, I'm going to make the important note here about If you were raised in baseball in the 2000s and in the first part of the 2010s, it really didn't matter if you won your division or not. Then they added the wild card game in, and you got, an incentive to win your division. Now the 16 playoffs means the big incentive is to be one of the top 2 seeds. And since the AL Central champion is guaranteed to be the worst team in the playoffs, winning the AL West allows you to skip around. I'm going to give a very optimistic and Pollyannish take over what's been happening in the AL West over the last 2 weeks. And we'll see if this is worthwhile or if this is just me being a little too much of a sunshine pumper. The Rangers are in their best streak of the season. They've won, I think, 9 of their last 10 games. And despite that, and despite Evan Grant jumping on Brian McTaggart's QTs, I'll give you a chance to talk about that here, James. Despite that, the Astros have won, I think, 7 of their last 10 here. They're pretty much keeping pace. And when the Rangers get out of, it looked yesterday they were going to win a game on an infield single, a two-base infield single and a balk. And I was going to punch this laptop here, which would have made broadcasting today problematic. But instead, they lost. The Astros maintained a game there. They're still in position here. Things are okay despite the Rangers' hot streak. Is that a useful take, or am I being a sunshine pupper?
It's the take I have. I don't understand when I watch Astros Twitter, who have almost resigned the division to the Rangers, and well, at least we look good for the wild card. They're 2.5 games back. There's still 3 games to play. And if we're to judge and look at how the head-to-head has gone recently, why would you have anything but confidence that the Astros can go to Texas and take 2 of 3? And we also know that all the
Astros just win one of those.
They just got to win one.
They'd win the tiebreaker, and that's
right.
And there's no game 163 anymore.
And I think that the Astros are starting to look like the team we're used to. And I got to think the injuries are going to catch up to the Rangers. And I think that they're going to fall back some. And yeah, I'm not backing off my prediction of the Astros winning the division by 3 games. I really am not prepared to do it. I don't understand Evan Grant. Brian McTaggart's tweet is the same kind of tweet he tweets every single Sunday, where he breaks down what the last X number of games were like. And I don't understand. Could you be any more little brother than having a beat reporter from a nationally recognized newspaper do a yeah, but tweet when you guys weren't mentioned at all? And it's, if you needed proof that the Rangers and everything around them were a joke organization, that is your proof. Evan Grant, one of the largest piles of crap to report sports in a long time. Boom.
I don't know that I can follow that other than to say that I don't think fans of teams should cover the teams that they're fans of.
No, look, and here's the thing. We know McTaggart is an Astros fan mathematically, but I do not feel like his tweets ever come across as a homer tweet. I really don't. I don't know if you disagree, but
he's more positive than the average beat reporter, but I don't know if that's because he grew up an Astros fan or because he works for essentially state media.
Right.
And basically my sort of thought always has been is like, Brian McTaggart's real comfortable working for state media. They're probably, he's the equivalent of, he's equivalent of the White House press secretary, except in a baseball way.
Yeah.
But hey. All right. So a week of teams that are on the edges of the whole sort of thing right now is they're playing teams that are on the edges of the wild card contention and trying to get in. So these are more desperate teams. They're playing the Marlins, who've had a irrationally good season, and then the Mariners, who, hey, maybe the good thing about the Astros losing on Wednesday is it gave some confidence to the Orioles to go and take 2 or 3 for the from the Mariners. Playing the long game there, right?
Yep.
Lose the battle, win the war, right? Maybe that's the take we should take from the Wednesday game here. And so that'll be the challenge this week, 3 in Miami. There. I'll Andy and then James, I'll let you wrap it up.
Pitching lines up good for us this week in Miami. We're avoiding Sandy Alcantara. And like you mentioned earlier, Fromber, Javier, and Verlander are 3 starters. If our offense continues to produce the way they have against the Orioles and the Angels, and even the Yankees to some extent, I think that this is a series that we should take 2 or 3 of. I hate saying that because should in baseball doesn't ever work out. And honestly, I'd forgotten the Mariners played baseball because they've been very quiet most of this season outside of any head-to-head competition, which they have done well against the Astros. I expect them to be very loud and obnoxious on all social medias this weekend if they win even one game. And they're, to their credit, they're very hot right now as well. I think they've won 8 of their last 10 coming out of the All-Star break. They've got either the second or third best record in the American League. There's a very real possibility of 2 of the wild cards coming from the American League West, which I don't know if you could have predicted in March or April.
No.
So it should be fun baseball. It should be competitive baseball. We're definitely stepping up in weight class when compared to what we saw this weekend with, Ohtani and the boys. And that's really what they should call their franchise, just Ohtani and the boys, because that's that.
They need to make the change quickly because they're going to have to change back.
Pretty soon it's going to be the boys.
Yeah.
Which is a fun show on Amazon. I don't know how much I'd love to see it in the baseball field.
I guess my closing thoughts are Evan Grant is the worst thing to happen to sports reporters. It's just the whole thing grosses me out. You have to have some level of professionalism. I get that it's more fun to cover a winner than not, but to basically dive to the lowest common denominator. It's a nice microcosm of everything else we're seeing in media across other topics. So that's my closing thought. And Go Astros.
Good. Hey, it's a chance once again to see Yuli Gurriel, who, of course, has done what everyone does in their retirement years, move to Miami. Go Astros.
What's more rare, Mothman, Chupacabra, or Michael Brantley actually making a rehab assignments? We'll find out this week. Go Astros.